Changing the Sales Game on webtalkradio.net. I'm your host, Connie Whitman. As always, I'm honored to have you join us. Now, I hope as you listen to the show each week that number one, you feel my mission to change that word sales from that initial instinct of ick, right? It's that icky, sleazy manipulation. And I am on a mission, and my guest today is also on a mission. We're going to talk sales today, but it's all about changing that perspective from that icky to really coming from a place of love, care, and respect. Now, to help you on your mindset journey, I do have a free gift for you. It's my communication style assessment. And I have to tell you, thousands of people have taken it. The feedback is amazing because here's the important component that you will learn. What is my natural communication superpowers? This is how people are receiving or not receiving your message. And then the flip side, you have a low score on the assessment, which is usually a blind spot. For me, I think understanding your blind spot or the client or customer that is the most unlike you, that's where you can really start to create some magic. So the link is in the show notes. I really hope that you enjoy taking it and learn something new about yourself. Also, if you love listening to the show, please subscribe. I don't want you to miss an episode. Sharing is caring. Sharing with your peeps is also important. And if you rate and review, I love reading your notes and your little love messages to me. It really does mean a lot. Now, my motivational quote today, just to get us in the mindset of our conversation around sales, is by Tiffani Bova. And Tiffani says, how you sell matters. What your process is matters, but how your customers feel when they engage with you matters more. And this quote, wow, as soon as I saw it, I knew it was the one to kick off today's show. Now, when I started my consulting firm 21 years ago, it was funny because I had never been in business before, right? I sat down and I started to reflect, well, what made me successful as a sales representative? And then obviously once I got into sales management. And here's what I found. The bottom line is I'm honest, I'm in integrity all the time. And I view my role in sales as educating the client so that they can actually make the informed and hopefully profitable decision for them, whether it's saving time, money, et cetera. Now, after reflecting, I realized that I had a 7-step process that logically and emotionally took the client through this process so that they can make not only the short-term, but the long-term answers. And by going through this process, right, creating this kind of vibe, right, of how I showed up, I was able to generate family, friends, other businesses. So for 40 years, I really have lived off of referrals. Now, my philosophy is simple. I call it the hat trick of sales. It's a win-win-win formula. So everyone in the equation comes out a winner. Now, my guest today, also like-minded, is Dr. Nadia. And I don't have Nadia's last name, which we will get to in a minute, but Dr. Nadia holds a doctoral degree in organizational leadership and is passionate about helping women become more authentic, confident leaders who take charge of their careers. She's a sales strategist, consultant, trainer, and founder of the Diane Agency. I probably said that wrong too, Nadia. And Diane Agency is a sales agency that works with business owners, companies, and corporations to multiply revenue and awaken the consistent closer within your sales team using the consistent sales method. She too has a method. Please help me welcome Nadia to the show. So Nadia, thanks so much for being on.
Thanks for having me, Connie.
All right. So how the heck is your last name Diane? Is that your last name too?
My last name is so simple. You're going to kick yourself. It's Brown.
So those listening on Apple Podcasts, I just covered my face in despair. How did I miss that in your bio? So my sincere Dr. Nadia Brown is in the room where she's with us now. Thank you for being so lovely for my little faux pas with that. But yeah, so here's some cool things as I was reading your bio, when I put it into my show notes, that your organizational leadership. And I think that is such another important piece of the equation with sales, because sales leaders listen to the show, but us within our own leadership skills, I think helps us move that needle, right?
Absolutely. It definitely makes a huge difference. And I think people really overlook that, especially as entrepreneurs or business owners.
Yes.
And a lot of times you start out on your own So it's just you having to manage you. But then as you grow, that's when your leadership skills really start to stand out.
It does. And that's, another piece of the puzzle, right? Like, we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about process. And I don't know if you have this, but especially my corporate clients,
Mm-hmm.
there has to be, for me to take on the business, I have a couple of what I call non-negotiables. It's not hard ass or anything, but it's one, they have to use some communication model. They could use mine if they use DISC or Myers-Briggs, because we need to help people get tangible tools to be able to communicate at a much higher level, right? Because
Yes.
really what we do in sales is we communicate, and we should be some of the best communicators, not always the case. Second non-negotiable for me is after the training is done, again, especially in corporations, who's watching after, who's inspecting, who's supporting, because
Yes.
training's great, but the learning happens when they're in real life situations. The
Absolutely.
other piece is there has to be a coaching component post the training. Otherwise, for me, I tell my clients, you're throwing money away, and I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
get paid to not get a return on the investment of time and money, right? Do you have
Yes.
something like that as well?
Absolutely, because as you know, it's one thing to sit in a classroom and to learn about sales and to practice calls and to theorize, right, or pontificate for days. But it's a whole different thing when you're actually in it and you're having conversations with real people and they throw you that curveball, or you realize, oh wait, I thought I understood that, but I didn't. And so, like you said, having that support after the training is really when you start to see the results that you invested in.
And it matters. We're spending time and money. Can we do it right the first time, right? So that
Yes.
everybody see my win-win-win.
Yes.
Person wins, the client wins, and the organization wins, right? Or the business,
Absolutely.
whatever the business wins. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's important. First question, I think this is an important one for every human, let alone people who are in sales or in business, right? That we have to make sales, otherwise we go out of business. How do we turn self-doubt into that kind of confidence, not overconfidence, but that nice piece of confidence?
Yeah, so I think that, I see this a lot. I work with a lot of women in sales and we come with our own unique our own unique challenges and viewpoints and things that we have around sales. And one of the things is really to take a moment and pay attention to our thoughts, because we think a lot of things that we don't pay attention to, and they're actually driving the bus most of the times. And
Mhm.
so paying attention to your thoughts. The other thing is to get into action. So we spend a lot of times, I call it the scandalicious drama going on in your head. So you're thinking about it, you're allowing the gremlins to take over, and you're not doing anything, but just sitting there thinking about it. So, what are the things that you can do to get into action, whether it's following up with a client, whether it's having conversations, whether it's working with your coach, like whatever it is that you need to do, get into action. Because just like we talked about with the leadership and the training and the coaching, it's the same thing when it comes to self doubt and confidence. As long as you're just sitting there thinking about it, especially dwelling on the negatives and the doubt and allowing that to continue to flourish and grow, which is what we want to kind of tamp down, then when you start taking actions, it starts to show you a different outcome. Because most of the things that we think are going to happen never happen. So we just spend that time wasting that energy being stressed out for no reason. But when you start taking the actions, whether it's, like I said, having a sales conversation, seeing how that sales conversation goes, what is the result, it starts to give you evidence to the contrary. So definitely paying attention to your thoughts and getting into action.
I love action because that's where the magic happens.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you'll see, I end every show by saying information is a beautiful thing, right, Nadia? But if we do
Mm-hmm.
nothing with it, it's information. Once we
Just,
put it into action, we create magic, right? That's where
yes.
stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
And people forget because let me learn one more thing. Let me do this before I do that. And we hold ourselves back and make you laugh, right? I'm sure you have a similar story. So I was sharing before we started. I was just at a conference in Dallas. I was one of the speakers. And so I did my thing. And of course, we're critical. And so
Mm-hmm.
people were coming up after the session, now as you're walking around, because we were there for 4 days, and we're walking around, they're like, oh, I came to your session yesterday. It was so great. So I pause and I go, oh, thank you so much. Because in my head wasn't good enough. I didn't say this. I forgot to say that. I didn't share that. And then one person came up and said, I have to tell you, you were one of the better speakers. I was like, really? Like self-doubt, like all over
Yep.
that. Like, really? What drugs are you taking that you think it's terrible? We
Yes.
all do it, right? And I've been doing
Yes.
this for 40 years. How long
Yes.
have you been in business?
I've been in business about 12 years.
A long time. Do you have those
Mhm.
moments of really?
All the time. Similar experience. I did a live stream on Wednesday where we were talking about my new book, and and of course it's live. You don't get to go back and edit it. And the same thing was in my mind. Oh, that one time where I lost my train of thought, or did I answer that question fully? Or I needed to pause and take a breath. I stumbled over a certain word. And then all the feedback, no one mentioned any of that. It was like, it was so good. And this information you shared, and you're just like, oh, seriously? Because of course we're only pointing out the things that went wrong in our minds, but people are really, on our energy and information we're sharing, how it's really transforming them. So totally all the time.
And the other thing too, like you and I were two peas in a pod, Nadia. So I'm loving it. But we show up for people with all of our heart. Like that's how we're wired. So even if we think it was a horrendous mess, because we come from this place again of love, care, and respect, people are receiving the information in just such a
Mhm.
genuine, loving way that why would they criticize? Because we are sharing good content on top of all of that, right?
Yes.
Here's the other thing, and I think this is important for everyone, your business owner, your sales. And oh, by the way, and I start this with every speaking event, we're always selling. Even if you're
Always.
in a career, a corporate career, you're selling your idea. If you're in HR, right, you're selling, or you're negotiating with those outside vendors. We're always in some type of sales capacity, whether we think we are or we're not. And
Mm-hmm.
sales really is about the communication. So I think you and I are kind of on the same page. We both have our methodology.
Yeah.
Um, what have you found is the number one secret to really building that relationship driven sales container, if you will?
It's going to be earth shattering, everyone.
I'm
Focus
waiting.
on, focus on the relationship. Like, right. I mean, think about it though, Connie. You've been in sales for a while, right? Like, how many times have we heard people say those words and then you see them in action and you're like, seriously, is that your definition of focusing on a relationship? Because they are not, or they're just focused on a relationship with themselves. Like, you can totally feel that they are not at all concerned about you. And so it really is, like you said, building into that process where you're focused on a relationship. Maybe you listen more than you speak. You know which questions to ask. You treat people with respect. You operate in integrity. Like, that's one of the reasons why sales has such a bad name. But it really is focusing on a relationship because we are operating and working with people who have feelings and they have their own things going on, and they want to feel heard, and they want to feel like they want to be made to feel important. And that's not too hard for us to do.
It's actually quite simple if you just think about it. But I mean, sales, right? We have to make sales to make the money to pay the bills. It is what it is. But here's
Mm-hmm.
the other thing: people go to work because they have to make money to pay the bills. We're all doing the same thing, whether we realize
Mm-hmm.
it or not, right? Your role at your job it maybe varies slightly, but it's all about earning money. Money should not be motivating you to have a conversation with someone or beforehand going, I can make 10 grand off this chick. Oh man, I'm going in hard.
Right.
That is the worst perspective because the person feels it and gets that icky feeling. And that's how we get that ick factor. And I don't know if you've seen this. It was on Netflix. Remember the whole scandal with all of the celebrities hiring that guy to get them into their kids into the Ivy League schools, and they paid him.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So
Mm-hmm.
they did a Netflix documentary about it. And you'll laugh at this. So my husband and I were watching it together, and my kids were in school. And the whole time I'm thinking, your kids should find the school where they're going to thrive in, not someplace that they wouldn't have gotten accepted. Now you're putting them in a devastating situation.
Yes.
Then you have depression and anxiety and all those things. But all right, whatever. That's a parenting thing. So as we were watching, they kept saying, whoever the guy was, I forget his name, dirtbag in my mind. And Connie Whitman, he was a dirtbag. So let's call him dirtbag. Anyway, as they were going through, the people that were in his orbit doing these illegal, to me, it was all illegal. But
Mm-hmm.
they kept saying he was a really good salesperson. And Nadia, every time I had to pause it, I'd look at my husband and go, we call him a con artist. He's not a salesperson.
Not
Why
at
do they keep
all.
calling him a salesperson?
I have no idea. But it's the exact reason why sales has such a bad name.
Agree 100%. And you and we're changing that in the world for
Yes, we
sure.
are.
The
Yes,
other
we
thing I
are.
just want to comment on, you said before, Connie, you've been in sales a while. Yes, 4 decades is a long while, but thank you for being kind with that. I picked up on your kindness there. So when you teach and you train and you coach, how do you get people to overcome that element of fear of selling? Because it really is fear-based.
hmm So when we talk about it, right? We speak to the elephant in the room. And then another thing is I love the 100 no's challenge. Like it's one of my favorite exercises for people, especially when they're new in sales,
Yes.
because I know it was one of the things that really helped me overcome it. So it's like, how can we have you have 100 conversations or more within the next 30 days? And your goal is to get 100 no's. Now, most people look at me like I've just lost my mind because, like, you're in sales. Why would you want no? But we all know no is part of the process. But it also starts to shift your perspective of no, right? Because and then no becomes a lot less scary because now my goal is to get no. This is the other thing that happens all the time. No one has yet to come back and say, Nadia, I got my 100 no's, because they get the yeses. And then they start working with the clients and they're having a great time and they're making the revenue, and then they go off and they do their thing. But now they don't have this fear of no. So I'm like, start to change your relationship with no. It sounds scary, and sometimes you have emotions about it. We all do. We're human, but it's part of the process. And so when you overcome it and you just say, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to take this challenge on, because we know it's also partly numbers. You're having these conversations, you're getting yeses, you're getting clients, you're doing your work, you're making a difference. You have a system to follow up with the no's for now, and because some of those will become yeses too.
And you said something important too. I know when we do the coaching piece with my clients, and oftentimes what ends up happening through the coaching process, the coaches, especially if they're not great at coaching, because that's another very difficult skill to become good at,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they come in and instead of saying, hey, Nadia, talk to me about what are some of the things you tried this week that worked in your just conversations with clients. What worked? Let's talk about
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
What did you feel uncomfortable? Where were the challenges, right? So I can explore that versus coming in. How many calls did you make? What was the result? Numbers. They go to the numbers.
Straight.
Behaviors drive the numbers. I can coach
Mm-hmm.
the human in their behaviors. I cannot coach the numbers. So this is what these are the things I hear often, and I'd like you to weigh in. My coaches say to me, well, they were making, the goal was 10 phone calls and they didn't get any results. So I told them next month they have to make 20 phone calls and then maybe their numbers will come in. And I say, okay, well, did you ask the employee? What were they saying on the phone? Were they comfortable on the phone? What kind of client, what responses were they getting? And then what you find when I would go and ask the employee, they go, well, I went and vomited. And then I got on the phone. Well, okay, so now they're scared to get on the phone. You haven't coached them with any telephone skills whatsoever. You haven't role played with them in a safe environment with you alone. You went now, so they failed with the 10 phone calls,
Mm-hmm.
vomited 10 times, and now you've increased their goal to 20. What do you think is going to change next month? Well,
They're just going to vomit 10 more times.
20, and the results are still going to be
The same.
no, because we're not focusing on behaviors. Do you see that often also?
All the time, which is one of the reasons why I talk about sales courage. I'm like, do you know how much courage it takes to do sales? And similar, coaches will always be like, what was the outcome? Did you get the sale? And I'm like, well, no. And it's like, what can we talk about? Like this, how was I feeling? What questions did I ask? Where can I make the adjustment? Where did these leads come from? Like there's so many factors that weigh into a yes or a no that
That's
a
right.
lot of times coaches don't even ask those questions. It's like, did you get the sale? Yes or no? That's the only thing they care about.
I'll make you laugh. When I first started my career, I sold insurance. And
Mm-hmm.
so the first time, well, maybe I was, you have to go out with the sales manager, blah, 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 and they talk, right? Well, I was probably about 6 months in on my own that the sales manager wasn't coming out with me. And I met with a business client and I ended selling $1 million policy. Now, back then it was in the 80s, Nadia. That was a huge policy. And think about it.
Yes.
I was in the business, 6, 7 months. I was a kid. So I come into work and I go into his office and I'm like, guess what? He's like, what? You made a sale? I go, mm-hmm, $1 million policy. You know what he said to me?
Oh
Why
my
wasn't it
gosh.
2 million? So these are I know, right? Everybody, the air just went out of the podcast right now. True, that's a true story.
I
And
believe you.
yes, and the funny thing is, you and I as coaches, I learned more from that negative vibe, right? Of he took
Mm-hmm.
the wind right out of my sails. $1 million sale
Is
was huge
huge.
back then, especially for a 20-something-year-old kid who was new to the industry. And that's his first comment. So here's the other thing for my coaches out there. He should not have been coaching. So that if that's how you're approaching your teams, please stop.
Please.
It's not a good way. It's
It's
just not
not
a good
helping.
way. No, it's not okay. What are 5 ways that you help your folks supercharge that you use the word sales courage, which I love? What are some of your strategies to help like amp that up a little bit?
Well, some we talked about already. Like I really am big on, it's similar to when you talked about like going to vomit before your sales calls, right? Like it's just really paying attention to the emotions because you're very emotional. And sometimes you talk yourself out of the sale before they even get a chance to say no. So I'm really big on paying attention to the emotions, the stories you're telling yourself so that you don't allow that negativity to, ruin your sales. The other one is, to really just what tools or resources, like when we talk about coaches, what are the things that you need to help to continue to build your confidence? So I am anti scripts. However, I know we need tools. I know.
I hate
Connie's
scripts
like,
too. I'm with you. Go ahead,
so
continue.
I
We're
call
on the
it,
same page.
your conversation guide. Like, what are the questions that you need in order to determine is this client a best fit, and if so, which solution is the best? So even asking questions, because I feel like sometimes people feel that if they go into a sales conversation, they have to go in and prove, that they're somehow worthy or all, and it's like, no, no, no. You can show your level of expertise just by the questions that you ask. So really helping them to formulate the questions and to have the support that they need during those sales conversations. And then again, like I mentioned, just being in action. So what are the things that you just need to do to have consistent practice? Because that also impacts your mindset. Like, you've been at this for a while. Like, again, if you look at your calendar for next week and you're looking at your goals and you only have like 2 sales calls on your calendar, we all know how that's going to turn out versus you're like, I have calls every single day. So the no's don't have the same kind of weight typically because, guess what? I have another opportunity tomorrow or I have another opportunity next week. So what are the things that you're doing or you need to do in order to stay consistent? And consistency obviously looks different for everyone, but you need to know that. And then another one is tracking the data. I don't know what it is about us and why we don't sometimes don't want to look at our numbers, but it's like the data and the numbers are so rich with information, and even having conversations, you learn so much from talking to real people. And so just again, what data do you need and how do you track that data? How often do you review that data so that it arms you with the information necessary? Like simple stuff. Where did this lead come from? If you're getting a lot of good leads, go do more of that. But sometimes it's just a focus of throwing all the spaghetti at the wall in our marketing because I can sell to and serve anyone. No, we want to serve the right people at the right time. And so really being strategic with your actions, because all of this is supporting you in really building your sales courage. And then the last one is really like what type of support, whether it's a coach, whether it's your self-care routine, whether it's your mastermind, because this can also be really stressful. And so what are you doing to keep you top notch so that you can show up in a spirit of service, so you can really focus on the relationships that you're building, so you're not always stressing about your goals or your bank account or whatever else is going on. And so you need your own support system to really support you so that you can always show up at your best.
And here's the thing. Yeah, we're talking about sales, but business, careers, they're all filled with stress because there's
Oh yeah.
always an unknown. Is there a merger happening? Am I going to have my job? Am I going to lose my job? A promotion's coming up. Are they going to give it to me? Are they going to give it to someone else? There's just so many unknowns in life. And when we start just focusing on what if this doesn't happen? What if I don't get the promotion? What if I don't make the sale? You said it before, 99% of what's going to happen, that 1% that something bad could happen, we focus on the 1%.
We do.
So I love the strategy of the no's because then you become immune to, it's another no. It means I'm getting closer to a yes. Like
Yes.
it's not that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, and I just wanted to share a really quick story. So one of my clients, I'm in New Jersey, they were in Connecticut. It's about 3.5 hour ride. And this was when maybe I was 5 years in business. I drive up, pull up, walk in, the CEO, was about 12 people in the meeting, right in the boardroom. CEO walks in, he looks at me and he said, "Where's your PowerPoint?" So I'm very professional at all times, Nadia. I said, "Huh?" So, so now I thought he doesn't think I'm prepared. So I said, "Hey, listen, I know this about the bank." It was a bank. And I said, "But I don't know. What training have you done? What's working? What's not? What can we build on instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater? Let's see, what can we build so we can save money? We can save time. What momentum is already in place? What is the objective? What do you want the skill level of your people to be at the end of this, et cetera, et cetera?" And then I said to him, "Here's the deal." His name was Mark. I said, "Mark, I could have come with Whitman and Associates from A to Z. What if you need LM&N? By the time I get to ABC of what I can do, you're bored. Like, you don't need any of that." His head tilted, his whole body language changed. And I thought, holy crap, I think I just got the business. So I always have an agenda, my questions in the packet. We and I said, I have to go through these I go 8 questions, Mark. I swear to God, that's all I need you to do is answer these 8 questions. And then I could do a proposal. Okay, cool. We sit down. So he says to everybody, "Connie has a lot of questions for us. She has an agenda in her packet of material." And all the other vendors that had come in. And here's another thing, Nadia. I don't know if you do this. I don't ever care who my competition is. If I'm the right person, they'll choose me. If I'm not, then God bless, go somewhere else, right? That means I wasn't the right fit. So he says, all these other vendors came in and they did their PowerPoint of what they could do A through Z. What if we need LM&N? By the time they got to C, we were kind of checked out. He looks over at me and he goes, "Right, Connie? Nadia, it took everything for me bursting out laughing and falling off of the chair." And at that moment, I don't put my price sheet in because I do customized proposals because every client's different. I thought, son of a gun, I just got the business. So here's the punchline. As he's leaving, of course, I got the business again. And I said, "Mark, I'll send the proposal. Start scheduling classes, get this under wraps. We want you. You're the best one," whatever, right? All those beautiful accolades, which you, of course, want to hear. As he was leaving, he pauses and turns back. He goes, "Con." I said, "Yeah, Mark, what's up?" He goes, "You see what you did with us today? Can you teach my people to do that?"
Wow.
Very, very important. That's sales. I need to understand and shut my mouth and listen before I can even recommend what that next smart step for you that's going to save you the time and money to get the return on the investment that you're putting out, whether it be time or money. Very important lesson I learned 5 years into the business. And the one other thing I want to say, and then I have another question for you. As I drove home, and I think I'm curious if you do this, it's my habit for 40 years, working. Whenever I left a meeting, I left a sale, I left a conversation, I left a training, whatever it was, my role, whether coaching session, management meeting, whatever. How did it go? If it went well, what went well? Can I duplicate that, rinse and repeat to continue that success? If it didn't go well, why? Was it me? Did I not ask the questions? Was I unprepared? Did they not understand? Were they the right lead? All of those questions, you get more clarity in how you move forward then, but you're self-assessing without judgment, by the way, because I want to duplicate the good and I want to eliminate the things I'm not doing well. Do you have something like that in your system?
Absolutely. And I even created a resource called the Courage Diary, which, especially for newer people to help them not only track the basics, but like you said, do a self-assessment, no judgment, but it's really starting to pay attention. Like, was I emotional? Did something happen on my way to the meeting that caused me to not be on top of my game? Like, really paying attention, because then we know what we need to eliminate, like you said so beautifully, and the things that we need to or want to duplicate so that we can, have a higher chance of closing more sales. So I love it. Yep, absolutely.
It's being aware,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
And when we talk about courage, I also love the courage journal. I think that's important, right? Because we know writing gets our thoughts down. And then when you see it in the written word, you can dig deeper and provide additional clarity, right? Of maybe what the next step is, or looking at that fear and saying, but I've never really experienced that. So why am I afraid of that? Right. Sometimes though you need to read your own words to say, well, that's not true. Right.
You have to be able to speak to that fear. And it goes back to like we talked about, taking action, because now through that, you start to have evidence. that has never happened in all these conversations I've had. That's never happened to me. Why am I afraid of it now?
Share with me one of your best success stories with a client, going from that, oh, sales, I'm so scared, to holy crap, I got this. Like, do you have just, I know you have several. Can you pick one that's like your favorite?
Oh my God. One of my favorites is a client I had who had worked in business and had some challenges, went back in corporate and was like, all right, I'm ready to get back out here full time again. And I was like, I can help with that. And so, one of the bigger challenges, especially for business owners, is saying an investment level that you've never said before. So I get that question, like, how do I fix my mouth to say some of these crazy numbers sometimes? And like, you just say it. And so working with her and going through the process and supporting her through, that journey, now she's like, I say the investment to my programs now with no problem, able to leave that job and be back in full-time business, doing her thing, creating the income that she desires, traveling, doing whatever it is that she truly desires, but more importantly, serving the clients that she wants to serve. But I think that one of the reasons why she's one of my favorites is it's really hard to get back in the game after you've experienced what you feel is like a really big failure. So it's one thing to come in brand new. It's another thing to know I tried that and I failed in some way, and now I'm trying to get back in it. So for her to be able to overcome all of those doubts, insecurities, and even what she may consider evidence to the contrary, to now be able to get out there and do her thing and serve her clients so well, it's really exciting to see her success.
Yeah, we're out of time, but here's the last word, that last piece you just said is serve our clients. And notice even before, with Mark, my example with my client in Connecticut, when he said, yeah, schedule the dates. I'm like, you don't even know what this is going to cost, right?
Like,
It's
doesn't
like, it
care.
doesn't matter.
Doesn't
So,
matter.
but think about that, because that's what I hear. Oh, they're not going to pay for that. They're going to, that's too much money. You're saying that, right? This dude didn't even know. And this was a six-figure contract, Nadia. This was not,
Yeah.
$2,000. And he knew it was going to be a six-figure. He didn't care whether I was 5,000 more than the other guy or 20,000 more than the other guy. It didn't matter, because I was the right fit for what their objectives were. You don't want the business that's not a good fit for you, because then you're
Absolutely.
earning the money. Good for you, but it's nothing but it throws off your entire game
It
because you're
does.
miserable. Serve the clients you were meant to serve, and serve them at the highest level. And another thing, and I don't know if you have this rule, but one of my rules with my business clients, not necessarily my corporate clients, well, even with my corporate clients, when you're in front of the client, there is no cookie cutter.
Mm-mm.
Yes, they might need a similar product. What else do they need, or what don't they need that you just sold to the person before? Everything we do should be customizable. And that's why I loved before when you said no scripts allowed. I could give people a framework, right? My 7-step
Mm-hmm.
sales process. You have your methodology, but there's no scripts in there, because you and I speak very differently, rightfully so, right? We
Yes.
different age groups, we have different backgrounds. I call CEOs dude, like that's my generation, right? And Chikorina, like I say things like this. Somebody else could never pull that off, or it would be
Mm-hmm.
weird. So we have to own who we are and serve our client where they are, and how we can humbly serve them at the highest level. But it's about
Yes.
the client, it's never about us. And I think that's another piece of the equation that
It's a
we
big
go in.
piece.
Yeah. And it holds us back, because we're worried about making the sale, and we're truly
Mm-hmm.
not present for what that client, their situation truly is.
Yeah.
And one last thing, what I would like you to weigh in, I feel like when we go in with a preconceived notion and not really go in with my set of questions and listening, that active listening. So I have a 70-30 rule. I'm listening 70% of the time. That's Connie's rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm with that client, though, I go in predetermined notion. But if they say something, I find, and what happens with my clients is, instead of selling one product or this very specific package, they sell a bigger package or multiple products, depending on
Yeah.
what your is. Or have you found the same thing with your clients?
Absolutely, because you go in thinking one thing, but when you sit down and you listen to what's being said, what's not being said. You can ask more questions. Tell me more about that. And then you start to uncover, wait a second, it's not this one thing, it's these 12 things. And they all were going to really really serve you in the best way. And like you share with your example with Mark, he care about the investment because he knew it was the right person, it was the right fit, and they were going to get the results. And that's what matters. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, I could talk to you all day. We would never make any money or get work
We
done because we
would
would just
not.
talk, right? So here's the deal. Number one, website, check it out. It's the Diana, say it.
It's the doyenagency.com.
Why can't my mouth say that today? The doyenagency.com. Trust me, peeps, it's going in the show notes, so you don't have to worry about the spelling. If you want to talk to Nadia directly, email her at hello@thedoyenagency.com. And your free gift is you have a sales blind spot quiz. You want to
Yes.
put that in the show notes, the link, but tell us what that is because I think it's cool.
It's like it's a quiz because we all have our blind spots. And so it's really quick, like 2 minutes, and it'll show you your blind spots and where and give you suggestions on how you can improve them and overcome them and make more sales.
I love it. Did you create the quiz?
I did.
I love it. I'm going to take it because I just love seeing what other people are like my CSA, my communication style assessment. It's the more we can learn about ourselves and not only our strengths, I think sometimes more importantly, right? Like that blind spot. Why am I lacking courage? Why am I afraid of that? No. If we can delve in a little bit more, we peel back our onion a little bit, all of a sudden the solutions show up for us and those blind spots are no longer blind spots. And then we start thriving and flourishing, which is really important, right? So
yeah,
my friends, I love you. I'm so glad we're connected. You and I, we're going to stay connected
we
and I
are.
think do some cool things together. I see it in our future. I don't know about
Yes.
you.
I'm totally in.
Yeah. So now all the people that know me, that listen week in and week out, when you enter my orbit and I like you, you're stuck with me for life now. So I hope that's okay.
Okay with me.
I love it. Nadia, thank you so much for your personality, your candor, your ease of making sales. It's not a big deal, right? I know it's not a big deal. I've been doing it a
Right.
long time, but even the newbies, these addressing the fear, having the courage, having these little tips, like you said, with the journal and these little baby steps that we can offer, it's easier than you think. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Thank you so much.
Thanks
I
for having
truly,
me.
yeah, truly enjoyed our conversation. You're amazing. You're absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, a real pleasure. And thank you for joining me. You know what? As we go through this journey of change, right, and changing the sales game, no matter where you are, we've got you. And I really do hope that Nadia and my conversation today, pick one thing that we said and take that little nugget of information and try it out. Try out journaling, right? Try to self-evaluate yourself after a good meeting, after not so good meeting, right? All of those little pieces of the puzzle. And for people in the organization, really think about that coaching piece after you do any type of training, whether it's like the leadership training, because your organizational development, your leadership training as well. Coaching is a vital part of any component of training. So again, take some of the tips and strategies we discussed, implement it. Information's great. We implement, we create action, magic starts happening. Nadia and I both want magic in your life.
Yes.
So implement. It's all about the implementation. Nadia, thank you again for being on. True joy meeting you. Again, more to come. And thank you for tuning in to Changing the Sales Game on webtalkradio.net. It's me, your host, Connie Whitman. I love you all. And I hope I see you next week. Same time, same bat channel. Tune in, subscribe, don't miss an episode, and sharing is caring. Love you all. Have a great week. Thanks so much.